The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Valdoria Castle as Sir William Hartwell adjusted his ceremonial sword for what he believed would be the last time. For 15 years, he had served as the personal guard to the royal family, watching over them with unwavering loyalty and dedication. His weathered hands, scarred from countless training sessions and 2 real battles, trembled slightly as he polished the silver insignia on his uniform. The kingdom of Valdoria had always been a peaceful realm, nestled between rolling green hills and crystal-clear lakes. Its people were known throughout the neighboring lands for their kindness, wisdom, and the gentle way they resolved conflicts. King Edmund and Queen Isabella ruled with compassion, making decisions that always put their subjects' well-being first. They were beloved by all who knew them, and their court was filled with laughter, music, and genuine warmth. Prince Marcus, their 12-year-old son, had grown up in this environment of love and responsibility. Unlike many royal children who might be spoiled or demanding, Marcus was thoughtful and quiet. He spent his days reading books in the castle library, learning about the history of his kingdom and the world beyond its borders. His tutors often remarked on his unusual wisdom for someone so young, and his ability to see situations from multiple perspectives. Sir William had been assigned as Marcus's personal guardian when the boy was just 3 years old. Over the years, they had developed a bond that went far beyond the formal relationship between a guard and his charge. William had taught Marcus how to hold a sword properly, though the boy showed little interest in combat. Instead, Marcus preferred to ask William about his adventures, about the people he had met in his travels before joining the royal service, and about the challenges facing ordinary citizens in their kingdom. The castle employed hundreds of people, from kitchen staff to stable hands, from seamstresses to scholars. Sir William knew them all by name, as did Prince Marcus. This was unusual for a royal household, but the family of Valdoria believed that everyone who served in the castle was part of one large, extended family. They ate their meals together in the Great Hall, celebrated festivals as one community, and supported each other through difficult times. Recently, however, tension had begun to build within the castle walls. King Edmund had been receiving pressure from neighboring kingdoms to increase military spending and to take a more aggressive stance in regional politics. Several advisors, particularly Lord Chancellor Blackwood, had been pushing for changes that would make Valdoria more like the traditional monarchies surrounding them. They wanted stricter protocols, more formal ceremonies, and a clear separation between the royal family and their servants. Prince Marcus had been observing these discussions from the shadows, as curious children often do. He noticed how the conversations in the Great Hall had become more subdued, how some of the newer advisors looked down upon the castle staff, and how his father seemed increasingly troubled by the conflicting advice he was receiving. The boy's keen intelligence allowed him to understand far more than most adults realized. One particular advisor, Sir Roderick Ashford, had been especially vocal about implementing what he called proper royal protocols. He believed that Prince Marcus was being raised too informally, that he spent too much time with servants and guards instead of focusing on his royal education. Sir Roderick had specifically mentioned Sir William in his criticisms, suggesting that the guard's informal relationship with the prince was inappropriate and potentially damaging to the boy's future as a ruler. These criticisms had not gone unnoticed by Sir William. He had served many noble families before coming to Valdoria, and he understood the traditional expectations placed upon royal guards. In most kingdoms, guards were expected to remain invisible, to speak only when spoken to, and to maintain a strict professional distance from their charges. His relationship with Prince Marcus was indeed unusual, built on mutual respect, genuine friendship, and shared interests in learning about the world. The weight of these expectations had been growing heavier on Sir William's shoulders with each passing day. He had begun to question whether his presence was truly beneficial for Prince Marcus's development as a future king. Perhaps Sir Roderick was right. Perhaps the boy needed to learn the formal distance that would be required of him as an adult ruler. Perhaps their friendship was holding Marcus back from becoming the leader his people would need. As Sir William stood in his small chamber within the castle, looking out at the gardens where he had often walked with Marcus, discussing everything from philosophy to farming techniques, he felt a deep sadness settling in his chest. The boy had taught him as much as he had taught the prince. Marcus's curiosity about the world, his genuine concern for others, and his ability to see the good in everyone had renewed William's own faith in humanity after years of witnessing the darker sides of political power. The decision to resign had not been made lightly. Sir William had spent many sleepless nights considering his options, weighing his personal attachment to the family against what might be best for Prince Marcus's future. He had drafted and redrafted his letter of resignation dozens of times, each version attempting to explain his reasoning without causing hurt or offense to the royal family who had shown him nothing but kindness and respect. In the corridor outside his chamber, Sir William could hear the familiar sounds of the castle awakening. Cook Margaret was directing the kitchen staff in preparing breakfast, her voice carrying the warmth and authority that had made her a beloved figure throughout the castle for over 20 years. The stable boys were leading horses out to the courtyard for their morning exercise, their cheerful conversations echoing off the stone walls. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the gentle sound of Prince Marcus practicing his violin, a skill the boy had taken up recently despite his tutor's suggestions that he focus more on traditional royal pursuits. These sounds, once comforting and familiar, now served as painful reminders of what Sir William would be leaving behind. This was not just a job for him. It was a home, a family, a way of life that had given his existence meaning and purpose. But he had convinced himself that staying would be selfish, that his personal feelings should not interfere with what was best for the prince's development as a future ruler. The letter of resignation lay on his small wooden desk, sealed with wax and addressed to King Edmund. In it, Sir William had written about his gratitude for the years of service, his respect for the royal family, and his belief that Prince Marcus would benefit from a more traditional approach to his royal education. He had not mentioned the pressure from the advisors or his own doubts about the appropriateness of their friendship. Instead, he had tried to frame his departure as a natural progression in the prince's education. As he prepared to deliver the letter to the king, Sir William reflected on the many memories he would carry with him. There was the time when Prince Marcus, then only 7 years old, had insisted on visiting the village during a particularly harsh winter, bringing food and warm clothing to families in need. The boy had spent hours listening to their stories, learning about their struggles and their hopes for the future. That day, Sir William had seen the makings of a truly great leader, someone who would rule with both wisdom and compassion. He remembered the countless afternoons spent in the castle library, where Prince Marcus would read aloud from books about distant lands and different cultures, always asking thoughtful questions about how other societies organized themselves and cared for their people. The boy's curiosity was endless, and his ability to absorb and analyze information was remarkable for someone his age. There were also the quieter moments, the times when Prince Marcus would seek out Sir William's company simply to talk about his thoughts and concerns. The boy had confided his worries about living up to his parents' example, his questions about what it truly meant to be a good leader, and his dreams of making Valdoria an even better place for all its people. These conversations had shown Sir William the depth of the boy's character and his genuine commitment to serving others. Now, as he prepared to walk away from all of this, Sir William wondered if he was making the right choice. The advisors' voices seemed to echo in his mind, reminding him of the traditional expectations placed upon royal children and their guardians. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps Prince Marcus needed to learn the formal protocols and distant demeanor that would be expected of him as king. Perhaps their friendship was indeed inappropriate and potentially harmful to the boy's development. But even as these thoughts circled through his mind, Sir William could not shake the feeling that something precious would be lost if the warmth and genuine human connection that characterized life in Valdoria Castle were replaced by cold formality and rigid hierarchy. He had seen what such systems produced in other kingdoms: rulers who were isolated from their people, who made decisions based on abstract principles rather than real understanding of their subjects' needs and experiences. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside his chamber brought Sir William back to the present moment. Soon, the castle would be fully alive with activity, and he would need to make his decision final. The letter of resignation felt heavy in his hands as he prepared to seek an audience with King Edmund. Once delivered, there would be no taking it back. His 15 years of service to the royal family would come to an end, and Prince Marcus would begin the next phase of his education under the guidance of more traditional advisors. As Sir William made his way through the familiar corridors toward the king's study, he passed the portraits of previous rulers of Valdoria, each one painted with the gentle expression and kind eyes that seemed to be a family trait. These kings and queens had built their kingdom's reputation for wisdom and compassion through generations of thoughtful leadership. He wondered if the changes being proposed by the new advisors would help Prince Marcus continue this tradition or fundamentally alter the character of Valdoria's monarchy. The morning light streaming through the tall windows illuminated the rich tapestries and carved wooden panels that decorated the castle walls. Each piece told a story of Valdoria's history, of moments when the kingdom's leaders had chosen understanding over force, negotiation over conflict, and inclusion over exclusion. These were the values that Prince Marcus had absorbed from childhood, the principles that guided his thinking and shaped his character. Outside in the courtyard, Sir William could see some of the castle staff beginning their daily routines. There was Thomas the blacksmith, whose family had served the castle for 4 generations, carefully maintaining the tools and equipment that kept the household running smoothly. Near the gardens, young Emma was tending to the herbs and vegetables that supplied the castle kitchen, her careful attention to each plant reflecting the pride she took in her work. These people were not just employees, they were members of the extended royal family that had made Valdoria Castle such a special place. Prince Marcus knew each of their names, understood their responsibilities, and often spent time learning about their crafts and their lives outside the castle walls. This connection between the royal family and their people was one of the kingdom's greatest strengths, but it was also what the new advisors seemed most eager to change. As he approached the door to King Edmund's study, Sir William paused to gather his thoughts and steel his resolve. The decision had been made, and he believed it was the right one for Prince Marcus's future, even if it broke his own heart. The boy would learn the formal protocols expected of royalty, develop the distant demeanor that would protect him from becoming too emotionally invested in individual cases, and prepare for the complex political challenges that awaited him as king. But deep in his heart, Sir William could not shake the feeling that something irreplaceable would be lost in this transformation. The warmth, spontaneity, and genuine human connection that made Prince Marcus such a remarkable young person might be sacrificed in the pursuit of traditional royal bearing. The very qualities that made Valdoria special might be diminished in the effort to make its future king more like the rulers of other less enlightened kingdoms. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Sir William knocked on the door to King Edmund's study, the letter of resignation clutched tightly in his grasp. Whatever happened next, he told himself, he had made this decision out of love for Prince Marcus and respect for the traditions of royal service. Time would tell whether he had chosen wisely or made the greatest mistake of his life. King Edmund looked up from his morning correspondence as the gentle knock echoed through his study. The familiar sound brought a small smile to his weathered face, as it usually meant that Sir William was arriving for their daily briefing. These morning meetings had become one of the king's favorite parts of each day, not just for the security updates they provided, but for the insights Sir William often shared about Prince Marcus's development and well-being. "Enter," King Edmund called, setting aside a letter from a neighboring kingdom that had been requesting yet another meeting about regional defense strategies. The political pressures from outside Valdoria had been mounting steadily, and the king found himself increasingly grateful for the steady presence of people like Sir William, who understood what truly mattered in governance. As Sir William stepped into the study, King Edmund immediately noticed something different about the man's demeanor. The guard's usually confident posture seemed slightly diminished, and there was a heaviness in his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult decisions. In his hand, he carried what appeared to be a formal document, sealed with the kind of precision that suggested matters of great importance. "Your Majesty," Sir William began, his voice carrying an unusual formality that made King Edmund's brow furrow with concern. "I request a few moments of your time to discuss a matter of personal significance." The king gestured toward the comfortable chair that Sir William had occupied during countless previous meetings, but this time the guard remained standing, maintaining a rigid posture that felt foreign in the informal atmosphere that characterized most interactions within the castle. "Of course, William," King Edmund replied, using the familiar form of address that reflected their years of mutual respect and collaboration. "You seem troubled. Please, sit and tell me what weighs upon your mind." Instead of accepting the invitation to sit, Sir William stepped forward and placed the sealed letter on King Edmund's desk with a reverence that suggested he was handling something precious and fragile. "Your Majesty, after much consideration and reflection, I have come to the conclusion that my continued service as Prince Marcus's personal guard is no longer in the best interests of his development as a future ruler." The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence, heavy with implications that neither man wanted to fully acknowledge. King Edmund's eyes moved from Sir William's face to the letter and back again, processing the meaning behind what he had just heard. "I don't understand," King Edmund said slowly, his voice reflecting genuine confusion and concern. "Has something occurred? Has there been some incident or disagreement that has prompted this decision?" Sir William's hands clasped behind his back in the formal stance he had been taught decades earlier during his initial military training. "No specific incident, Your Majesty. Rather, it has become clear to me that the informal nature of my relationship with Prince Marcus may be hindering his preparation for the responsibilities that await him as king." As these words were spoken, neither man was aware that Prince Marcus himself was approaching the study. The boy had been looking for his father to discuss a book he had been reading about diplomatic relations between small kingdoms. But as he drew near the partially open door, the sound of familiar voices discussing his future made him pause. Prince Marcus had always been encouraged by his parents to think independently and to observe the world around him carefully. These habits had served him well in his studies and in his understanding of the complex dynamics within the castle. Now, as he heard Sir William speaking about leaving his service, the boy's mind immediately began to analyze what might be driving such an unexpected decision. From his position outside the door, Prince Marcus could hear the concern in his father's voice as King Edmund responded to Sir William's explanation. "William, I must say that I find this reasoning difficult to accept. The relationship you have built with Marcus has been nothing but beneficial to his development. He has learned more about leadership, compassion, and responsibility from your example than from any formal lesson." "I am grateful for your confidence, Your Majesty," Sir William replied, "but recent discussions with members of the court have made it clear that my approach to guardianship may be too informal for someone in Prince Marcus's position. Perhaps it would be better for him to work with someone who can maintain the proper professional distance and teach him the protocols he will need as king. Prince Marcus felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest as he listened to these words. He understood immediately that Sir William was not making this decision because he wanted to leave, but because he believed it was what others expected of him. The boy's sharp mind quickly connected this conversation to the various criticisms and suggestions he had overheard from Sir Roderick and other newer advisors over the past several weeks. The 12-year-old prince had noticed the way some courtiers looked at Sir William with disapproval when they saw him engaging in friendly conversation with Prince Marcus. He had observed the whispered discussions about appropriate protocols and maintaining proper boundaries that seemed to follow wherever Sir Roderick went. Most importantly, he had seen the gradual change in Sir William's behavior, the way the guard had become more formal and distant as the pressure mounted. In that moment, standing outside his father's study and listening to Sir William sacrifice his own happiness for what he believed was expected of him, Prince Marcus made a decision that would define his character and his approach to leadership for the rest of his life. The boy realized that this was not just about one man's employment, but about the fundamental values that would shape his kingdom's future. Without announcing his presence, Prince Marcus turned and walked quietly back down the corridor, his mind working rapidly to formulate a plan. He understood instinctively that simply bursting into his father's study and demanding that Sir William stay would not address the underlying issues that had created this situation. Instead, he needed to find a way to demonstrate the value of the relationships and approaches that were being questioned. As Prince Marcus made his way through the castle, he began to notice things with new eyes. He saw Cook Margaret instructing a young kitchen assistant with patience and kindness, taking time to explain not just what to do, but why each step mattered. He observed Thomas the blacksmith working alongside his apprentice, sharing decades of accumulated wisdom while maintaining the kind of mentorship that built both skills and character. Throughout the castle, Prince Marcus realized, there were countless examples of the informal, caring relationships that made Valdoria special. These connections were not signs of weakness or lack of discipline. They were the foundation of the kingdom's strength. People worked harder, cared more, and contributed better ideas when they felt valued and respected as individuals rather than simply as servants performing functions. The prince made his way to the great library, where he knew he would find the peace and quiet necessary to think through his response to this situation. Among the ancient books and chronicles of Valdoria's history, he began to understand something that the newer advisors seemed to have forgotten. Every great achievement in his kingdom's past had been accomplished through collaboration, respect, and the kind of genuine human connections that were now being criticized as inappropriate. As he sat surrounded by the wisdom of previous generations, Prince Marcus began to formulate a plan that would address the concerns of the advisors while preserving the values that made Valdoria special. He understood that he could not simply oppose the criticism of Sir William's approach. Instead, he would need to demonstrate why that approach was actually superior to the alternatives being proposed. Meanwhile, in King Edmund's study, the conversation between the king and Sir William continued to unfold with increasing emotion on both sides. The king was struggling to understand how someone as wise and dedicated as Sir William could believe that leaving was the right choice, while the guard was trying to explain his reasoning without revealing the specific pressures that had influenced his decision. "William," King Edmund said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine affection and respect, "I have known you for 15 years. I have watched you guide my son with wisdom, patience, and integrity. The idea that your influence could somehow be harmful to his development is not only wrong, but insulting to everything you have accomplished." Sir William's resolve was beginning to waver under the king's passionate defense. But he forced himself to maintain his position. "Your Majesty, I am deeply grateful for your confidence in me. However, I must consider not just my own feelings, but what is truly best for Prince Marcus's future. Perhaps it is time for him to work with someone who can provide the more formal training that others believe he needs. The sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside the study caused both men to pause in their conversation. A moment later, there was another knock on the door, this one carrying the lighter rhythm that both men recognized as belonging to Prince Marcus. "Father," came the boy's voice from outside the door, "may I join you? I have something important to discuss." King Edmund exchanged a glance with Sir William, both men wondering how much the prince might have overheard. "Of course, Marcus. Please come in." As Prince Marcus entered the study, both his father and Sir William could see that the boy's usual calm demeanor carried an undertone of determination that suggested he was about to address something significant. The 12-year-old walked with the confident bearing that had been developing over the past year, but his expression carried a seriousness that seemed beyond his years. "I apologize for interrupting," Prince Marcus began, his voice clear and steady, "but I could not help overhearing part of your conversation as I approached. Sir William, I understand that you believe you should resign from your position as my guardian." The directness of the boy's statement caught both men off guard. Sir William had hoped to handle his resignation quietly, without causing distress to Prince Marcus or forcing the boy to participate in adult decisions about his education and future. "Your Highness," Sir William replied carefully, "this is a matter between your father and myself. You should not concern yourself with these administrative details." Prince Marcus stepped further into the room, his eyes moving between his father and the man who had been his constant companion and teacher for as long as he could remember. "With respect, Sir William, this decision affects me more than anyone else. I believe I have the right to understand why you feel you must leave, and to express my own thoughts about what would be best for my education and development." The boy's calm confidence and mature reasoning impressed both men, but it was the underlying sadness in his voice that touched their hearts. King Edmund could see that his son had inherited the family's ability to understand complex situations and to approach them with both emotional intelligence and practical wisdom. "Very well, Marcus," King Edmund said gently. "What would you like to say?" Prince Marcus took a deep breath and began to speak with a clarity and purpose that would reshape not just this conversation, but the entire future of his relationship with those who served his family. His next words would represent his first major decision as a future ruler, and the impact of what he was about to say would be felt throughout the castle and beyond for years to come. Prince Marcus stood quietly in his father's study for a long moment, his young mind organizing thoughts that would challenge the assumptions of adults who had decades more experience than he did. The silence stretched between the three of them, not uncomfortable but pregnant with possibility, as if the very air in the room understood the importance of what was about to be said. "Sir William," Prince Marcus began, his voice carrying a steadiness that belied his 12 years, "I have heard the concerns that some advisors have raised about our friendship. They believe that knowing you as a person rather than simply as a guard is somehow making me weak or unprepared for leadership." Sir William's eyes widened slightly at the boy's perceptive understanding of the situation. He had hoped to protect Prince Marcus from the political pressures that had influenced his decision, but clearly the prince was far more aware of the castle's dynamics than anyone had realized. "I want to tell you about something I observed yesterday," Prince Marcus continued, moving to stand near the window where morning light illuminated his serious expression. "I was walking through the village with my tutor, Master Edwin, when we encountered a situation that I believe demonstrates why the advisor's concerns are misguided." Both King Edmund and Sir William listened intently as Prince Marcus began to recount his experience, his narrative skills reflecting the careful attention he had always paid to the world around him. we came upon a group of children who were arguing about the distribution of bread from the baker's cart. The older children had taken most of the loaves, leaving very little for the younger ones. Master Edwin was prepared to intervene immediately, to impose a solution based on his authority as a representative of the castle. The prince paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing with what was clearly the most important part of his story. "But I remembered something you taught me, Sir William. You once told me that the best solutions come from understanding why people act as they do, not from simply imposing rules from above. So instead of allowing Master Edwin to distribute the bread according to his judgment, I asked the children to explain their reasoning." King Edmund found himself leaning forward, genuinely curious about how his son had handled the situation. Sir William remained still, but his eyes reflected a growing understanding of where the boy's story was leading. It turned out that the older children had been saving money for weeks to buy extra bread for their families, who were struggling because of the poor harvest in their section of the valley. The younger children, meanwhile, had simply arrived at the cart expecting to be able to purchase their usual amount, without understanding that supplies were limited. Prince Marcus moved away from the window, beginning to pace slightly as his excitement about the story grew. Once everyone understood the full situation, the children themselves developed a solution. The older ones agreed to share some of their extra bread immediately, while the younger ones promised to help with extra work in the fields to ensure that the next harvest would be better for everyone. The boy stopped pacing and looked directly at Sir William, his eyes bright with the satisfaction of having successfully applied lessons he had learned. Master Edwin was amazed by this outcome. He told me later that if he had simply imposed a solution based on authority, the underlying problems would not have been addressed, and similar conflicts would have continued to arise. Sir William felt a warmth spreading through his chest as he recognized the principles he had tried to teach Prince Marcus being articulated with such clarity and wisdom. But the boy was not finished with his explanation. "This experience made me realize something important about leadership," Prince Marcus continued, now addressing both his father and Sir William. "The advisors who criticize our friendship believe that maintaining distance from people makes a ruler stronger and more effective. But yesterday's experience proved to me that understanding people as individuals, knowing their stories and their motivations, is what allows a leader to find solutions that truly work." King Edmund could hardly contain his pride as he listened to his son's reasoning. The boy had not only understood the immediate situation in the village, but had grasped the broader implications for leadership philosophy. "Sir William," Prince Marcus said, turning to face the guard directly, "everything you have taught me about treating people with respect, about listening to their concerns, and about working together to solve problems, has made me a better person and a better future leader. The advisors who want you to leave are asking me to become the kind of ruler who makes decisions from a distance, without truly understanding the people he serves." The prince took a deep breath before making his next statement, and both adults could sense that he was about to say something that had been carefully considered and deeply felt. "I refuse to become that kind of leader." The simple declaration carried a weight that surprised everyone in the room, including Prince Marcus himself. It was not spoken with anger or defiance, but with the quiet conviction of someone who had thought deeply about their values and was prepared to stand by them. "Your Highness," Sir William began, his voice reflecting both admiration and concern, "the advisors' recommendations are based on centuries of tradition and experience. Perhaps their concerns deserve more consideration than you realize." Prince Marcus nodded respectfully, acknowledging Sir William's point while preparing to address it directly. "I understand their perspective, Sir William, and I don't dismiss their experience. But I believe they are applying lessons from other kingdoms without considering what makes Valdoria special." The boy moved to his father's bookshelf, running his fingers along the spines of volumes that contained the recorded history of their kingdom. Every book in this room tells stories of Valdorian rulers who succeeded because they understood and cared about their people as individuals. Our kingdom's strength has never come from maintaining distance and authority, but from building genuine connections and trust. King Edmund felt a surge of recognition as he heard his son articulating principles that had guided his own reign and those of his predecessors. The boy was not just defending Sir William, he was defining his own vision of leadership based on careful observation and thoughtful analysis. "I have been thinking about this for several days," Prince Marcus continued, "and I have developed a proposal that I believe addresses the advisor's concerns while preserving the values that make our kingdom strong." Both adults looked at the prince with surprise. Neither had expected him to offer a concrete alternative to the situation they were struggling to resolve. "Rather than dismissing Sir William from his position, I propose that we expand his role to demonstrate the effectiveness of his approach to others in the castle. I want him to begin training other guards and advisors in the methods he has taught me, showing them how understanding people as individuals can improve both security and governance." The proposal was so unexpected and sophisticated that both King Edmund and Sir William needed a moment to process its implications. Prince Marcus had found a way to validate Sir William's approach while addressing the concerns of those who questioned it. Additionally, the prince continued, clearly having thought through multiple aspects of his proposal, "I suggest that we invite Sir Roderick and the other concerned advisors to participate in a series of exercises where they can observe and evaluate the effectiveness of different leadership approaches in real situations." Sir William found himself genuinely amazed by the maturity and political sophistication of the boy's thinking. Prince Marcus had not only identified a solution that could satisfy multiple competing interests, but had framed it in a way that transformed potential conflict into opportunity for learning and growth. "Your Highness," Sir William said slowly, "your proposal is both generous and wise, but I must ask whether you have considered the possibility that such experiments might prove the advisor's concerns to be justified. What if the formal approaches they recommend turn out to be more effective than the methods I have taught you?" Prince Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the study, his expression reflecting not arrogance, but confidence in principles he had tested through his own experience. "Then I will learn from that discovery and adapt my approach accordingly. But I believe that when people see the results of treating others with genuine respect and understanding, they will recognize the value of what you have taught me." King Edmund could no longer contain his admiration for his son's reasoning and maturity. "Marcus, your proposal demonstrates exactly the kind of thoughtful leadership that Valdoria needs. You have found a way to honor different perspectives while staying true to your own values." The prince turned to Sir William with an expression that combined respect, affection, and quiet determination. "Sir William, I am not asking you to stay simply because I will miss your friendship, though I certainly will. I am asking you to stay because I believe your approach to leadership and human relationships represents the best path forward for our kingdom. I need you to help me prove that to others." As Sir William looked into the eyes of the 12-year-old boy who had just demonstrated wisdom beyond his years, he felt the weight of his resignation letter becoming unbearable. Prince Marcus had not just asked him to stay, he had articulated a vision of leadership that honored both tradition and innovation, both individual relationships and broader responsibilities. "Your Highness," Sir William said, his voice thick with emotion, "I am humbled by your confidence in me and inspired by your wisdom. If you truly believe that my continued service can benefit not just your education, but the kingdom's future, then I would be honored to remain as your guardian and to take on the additional responsibilities you have proposed." Prince Marcus stepped forward and, in a gesture that surprised both adults, formally extended his hand to Sir William in the manner of one leader acknowledging another. As the guard clasped the boy's hand, both understood that their relationship had evolved into something new, still founded on mutual respect and genuine care, but now also encompassing a shared commitment to demonstrating the effectiveness of compassionate leadership. King Edmund watched this exchange with deep satisfaction, recognizing that his son had just demonstrated the qualities that would make him a truly great ruler. The boy had faced a complex political situation, analyzed the competing interests and concerns, and developed a solution that honored everyone's dignity while advancing his own principles. Over the following weeks, Prince Marcus's proposal was implemented with remarkable success. Sir William began working with other guards and advisors, sharing the approaches he had developed over years of service. Rather than threatening their authority, these methods enhanced their effectiveness, allowing them to better understand and respond to the needs of those they served. Sir Roderick and the other concerned advisors participated in the evaluation exercises that Prince Marcus had suggested, and while some remained skeptical, many began to see the practical benefits of the more personal approach to leadership. The prince's quiet confidence and willingness to have his methods tested impressed even his harshest critics. Most importantly, the experience taught Prince Marcus something crucial about leadership that would serve him throughout his life. He learned that the most powerful decisions are often not the dramatic, public pronouncements that capture attention, but the quiet, thoughtful choices that demonstrate one's values and principles. His decision to defend Sir William and propose an alternative solution had been made without fanfare or grand speeches, but its impact resonated throughout the castle and beyond. The story of the young prince who had convinced a loyal guard to stay by demonstrating the wisdom of his teachings spread beyond the castle walls, reaching other kingdoms where rulers were struggling with similar questions about tradition and innovation. Prince Marcus's approach, respecting different perspectives while staying true to core values, became a model for other young leaders facing pressure to abandon what made their kingdoms special. Years later, when Prince Marcus became King Marcus, he would often reflect on this early test of his leadership principles. The quiet decision he had made in his father's study to stand up for the values and relationships that defined his character had set the tone for everything that followed. Sir William remained at his side throughout his reign, serving not just as a guard but as a trusted advisor whose wisdom had been enhanced rather than diminished by their personal friendship. The Kingdom of Valdoria continued to thrive under this approach, proving that strength and effectiveness in leadership could indeed come from understanding and caring about people as individuals rather than maintaining distant authority. And at the heart of this success was a 12-year-old boy's quiet, powerful decision to defend what he believed was right, even when faced with pressure from those who were older and supposedly wiser. The resignation letter that Sir William had written was never delivered. Instead, it was kept in his personal papers as a reminder of how close he had come to making what would have been the greatest mistake of his life. Whenever he looked at it in later years, he was reminded of the wisdom and courage of a young prince who had understood something about leadership that many adults had forgotten, that genuine strength comes not from standing above others, but from standing with them,